It is under this man, our Premier, Peter Carl Gutwein, that we have been weighed, we have been measured, and our moment has come. This is the state of our state. Mr. Deputy Speaker, a little over a year ago, an outbreak of a previously unknown virus occurred in the city of Wuhan in the province of Hubei, an industrial and logistical hub in the eastern provinces of China. It appeared in a wet market, as many respiratory illnesses have before. Li Wenliang, a 34-year-old doctor, was one of the first to blow the whistle, but was silenced by police and tragically died 7 February 2020. He was one of the world's first COVID healthcare heroes. Sadly, there were many more to come. The virus spread. A lockdown was first initiated in the city that spread across the province. People were welded into their homes by authorities. Field hospitals were established, bodies piled up in freezer trucks, and thousands of people died. As the virus spread throughout the World Health Organization did, as did the leaders of many other countries. Strong actions were taken first by our federal government to close our international borders, first to China, then Iran, Italy, and eventually all the other borders, effectively self-isolating Australia. Beggar thy neighbour restrictions were imposed by China, and Australians discovered that if we can't manufacture face masks and if we can't manufacture ventilators in the middle of a pandemic, then we as a country and as a world are in trouble. Then what happened? Well, nightmare scenarios have since played out. So much has been said over this last year, but let us hear it again. Across Europe, cases of coronavirus spiked. Supply shortages as well as bureaucratic and logistical obstacles face people of every walk of life. Governments put exhausted communities into lockdown and back into lockdown again. Street protests turned violent. Neighbours were pitted against neighbours, friend against friend, brother against brother. Around the world, empty streets, closed schools, shuttered restaurants, cancelled Easter holidays, Christmas vacations, and in many ways, those cancelled events, those time-honoured traditions, the cancellation of them came as some form of bitter relief to the residents of a world with climbing infections, choked hospitals, and rampant deaths. Italy. It's been reported half of Italy's 20 regions, which include cities of Rome, Milan, Venice, will now be entering new coronavirus restrictions from Monday, March 15th. The measures will be effective through April 6th, according to a decree passed by the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi's cabinet on Friday. In regions demarcated as red zones, people will be unable to leave their houses except for work or health reasons, with all non-essential shops closed. In orange zones, people will be able to leave. People will also be banned from leaving their towns or their regions except for work or health reasons, and bars and restaurants will only be able to do delivery and takeaway service. Affected regions will be labelled red and orange depending on the level of contagion. Regions that report weekly COVID-19 cases of more than 250 people per 1,000 residents will also automatically go into lockdown, meaning that other regions could also be affected during that time period. Additionally, over Easter weekend, the entire country will be considered a red zone and will be subject to a national lockdown from April 3 to 5. The story of Germany reads something similar, and it's worth recapping. German authorities were expected to extend lockdown measures on Monday and possibly tighten some restrictions as they face a steady rise in new coronavirus infections, but leave schools open for now. Several states have tried to avoid going back into tougher lockdowns when weekly numbers of new infections exceed 100 per 100,000 residents on 3 consecutive days. Angela Merkel made clear that she wouldn't accept that. Unfortunately, we will have to make use of this emergency brake, she said. The weekly infection rate per 100,000 people stood at 107 nationwide on Monday, up from mid-60s 3 weeks ago. Officials agreed to largely shut down public life from April 1 to 3, adding a public holiday and shutting down most stores for the period. Public gatherings will be banned from April 1 to 5 to encourage people to stay at home. In Britain, the story looked very similar. Britain's packed hospitals are 3 weeks away from being overwhelmed as coronavirus fuels a record-breaking surge in cases and triggers a national lockdown. Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday night said the United Kingdom faced a pivotal moment and the coming weeks would be the hardest yet. In England alone, the number of COVID patients in hospitals has increased by nearly a third in the past week to almost 27,000. And that number is 40% higher than the first peak in April. People will only be legally allowed to leave their homes to shop for essentials, get medical treatment, escape domestic abuse, or go to work when absolutely necessary. However, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to be clear, these are not stories of 2020. These are stories of 2021. The moments are not articles from last year. They are literally the news of the day as we speak. This is the state of our world. But yet we look at the state of our state in 2021 in comparison. The world is in lockdown with hundreds of thousands of deaths, many more currently in ICUs or dying in their homes, with a global recession of staggering scale and ferocity that will set back a generation. A world that is adding nearly 500,000 new cases a day to a total that has now reached more than 120 million cases, with sadly nearly 2.7 million deaths. And here we are in Tasmania, safe, secure, our way of life returning. The state of our state is summed up in the simple refrain heard in farms and factory floors, building sites and aged care homes in our villages, cities and towns. There's nowhere in the world I'd rather be than here right now. That quiet, assured, cautiously optimistic phrase heard again and again from the mouths of everyday Tasmanian heroes. The little people, the quiet people, the all too often forgotten people. Those people who see jobs returning, their small business on its feet once again, a future for our children on this, our island home. In Tasmania, people tend to vote first with their feet. In the dark times when governments fail or the global economy lurches, they're forced to pack up and leave to find new hope, but far from home. In the better times, our people come back and the state grows again. This is our time. And our problems in 2021, remarkably, are those of growth, in sharp contrast to the all too familiar problems of decline. We are stronger, we are prouder, we are more confident. We're brought together under one banner. Mr. Deputy Speaker, J.K. Rowling wrote, I believe it was in the first Harry Potter book, The Philosopher's Stone, that there are some things that you can't share without ending up liking each other. And knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. This, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I believe is very great wisdom, and surely COVID has been our 12-foot mountain troll. I'm very proud to stand with the people who we appear to have knocked it out with. Now, the plan for the future. Premier Peter Gutwein, in his State of the State report, said there are now over 22,000 more Tasmanians employed than since coming to government in 2014. Our economy is one of the strongest in the country, and we have the lowest unemployment rate of any state in the nation. The number one issue that I hear in the towns and the farms right across the northwest coast, the west coast and King Island is jobs. Jobs for now, jobs for the future, jobs that we can rely on. Mr Deputy Speaker, this government is putting in place in the State of the State report plans for a job-ready generation. Establish a job-ready fund of $2 million to help job seekers gain essential tools that they need for the job. And I know, Mr Deputy Speaker, I have been in that place where I was making less than $40 a day as an apprentice working full-time in my first year, and that was after tax. And having to pay for the tools of the trade to get the qualifications that I needed, the white cards, the boots, all the sundry items that you need to rely on to be able to do your job. To have a government that supports not just those people who go to university or those who choose to drop out from work, but those who choose to use their hands to put themselves in our building sites, on our farms, in our mines, in our forests, to earn a living for this generation and those to come. Those people need to be supported. And while in many ways it is the little things that really count, in that moment, as an 18-year-old beginning your first job, it truly is the little investment that just means that you can be that much further ahead at the end of the week when you would have been just that little bit further behind. Because we want to encourage every young Tasmanian, regardless of their background, regardless of their circumstance, to pick up the tools, to work hard, to provide for their family and to provide for our future. Because, and despite the fact that it is a cliche, it is eminently true that young people are our future. We want to expand our Area Connect service to get more people into work, training or education where no easy transport exists. When you live in a vast, remote, rural area, such as the people in my electorate, Mr Deputy Speaker, and yours as well, the people of the West Coast, of Circular Head, King Island, you know, many places in the hinterlands behind our towns where people want to be able to work, where they want to be able to find a future and they find an income. We want to make sure those people are connected with those who provide the jobs. We want to fund a $400,000 Worker Connect portal, providing Tasmanian businesses and job seekers with information about local jobs, as well as the programs and support services available. Because that's one of the things about government, and when you're a young person, you don't speak the same language. You don't understand things in quite the same way as the middle-aged bureaucrats who wrote the policy in the first place. So we want to be able to line up those job seekers with the services that they need to be able to do the job. We want to put them in the place where they can get exactly the right support that they're needed, the support that's offered, the support that's there, but through the little communication things, the way that sometimes generations can't speak the same language. We want to put those people together and make sure that they have the jobs to get the job done. We want to expand our successful job matching service with an additional $2.4 million to place job seekers with local employment vacancies. And this again, Mr Deputy Speaker, is about putting a young job seeker who doesn't have the experience and who doesn't have the qualifications or the life experience that would have been putting them in that place in the first place. It's about getting them to have a go and making sure that they get a go. We want to guarantee that all young people in Tasmania have a job, but the first place that we do that is by making sure that they're linked with the people in our community who want to give them their start. We're introducing to that end a Tasmanian employer bonus, which is about incentivising employers to take on long-term job seekers. And we know this in the Northwest Coast, where there are pockets of long-term disadvantage, where people for 3 generations have not worked and have not earned and have not contributed to our society in the way that would guarantee that they live up to their potential and they can support others. We don't want to see those people being left behind. And in this moment, when we have a global pandemic, when the world is in recession, but Tasmania is leading the way, we want to make sure that every person who wants to work is put in that position and that they can succeed. $6.5 million over 2 years to help employers take on job seekers who have experience and skills but need a fair go, with $6,500 incentive to those employers. That's going to make a massive difference, Mr Deputy Speaker. We believe in these people, and we want to ensure that the incentives are there for others to believe in them as well. Mr Deputy Speaker, I want to speak briefly about the construction industry, an industry that I know very, very well. There's $5,000 per lot for a headworks holiday. That means more jobs. It means more tradies getting out on site. It means more utes in the vacant blocks around our towns and in our cities. It means more family homes. It means more people can finally get the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom place that they want to settle down and start a family. Those are the simple things that can be unlocked when you provide the clever incentives that are brought to us by the business community across Tasmania, by the tradies, by the people who know how to get things done. We want to incentivise them to build for the future, to secure the homes and lives of Tasmanians who want to set themselves up and who want to start a family. $5,000 per lot for a headworks holiday. I couldn't imagine anything that sounds more unsexy. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's about dreams, it's about livelihoods, it's about securing our future. HomeBuilder has delivered with 2,600 applications received and 1,763 applications already conditionally approved by the State Revenue Office in total, in the 12 months of January, there were 3,538 new dwellings approved. That's the most approved in a quarter century. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is a very strange downturn around the world where in Tasmania we are building more than we have ever done before. It is truly staggering what we've been able to achieve in this place. We're talking as well land tax relief. 70,000 people will have land tax relief through this package in the State of the State report. 4,100 people will no longer need to pay land tax at all. That's about freeing our people from the shackles that is taxation. It's about putting more money back in their pocket and making sure that they can spend it in the way that they see fit. The Leader of the Opposition spoke once about tired old formulas of tax cuts. Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can tell you as someone who worked for a living that you've earned every dollar of that, and it deserves to be back in your pocket whenever we can afford it. So we're also providing stamp duty relief, and that's to benefit young families, but also seniors, people who want to downsize their home, because they are the ones who've borne the heaviest burden during this pandemic. The young families who cancelled weddings, who put their lives on hold, whose businesses were under threat, and the seniors who could not leave home, who relied on family and charity just to pick up the shopping, who haven't seen visitors in their aged care home, in many cases, for many months. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am very passionate about TAFE and making sure that every person who wants to train for a role that is hands-on can find that training, and they can find it here. I know from my own personal experience what a difference it can make to the lives of young people. It's about training for the future. It's about experience for our young people. It's about making sure that night schools, weekends, holidays, times where busy families and busy people can squeeze in the training to get ahead, that's when we want to be able to provide the training for our young people, to make sure that TAFE is flexible enough to respond not just to the teachers' needs, but to the learners' needs. It's about putting the learners of Tasmania at the centre of our education system. I spoke before when I was an 18-year-old apprentice, making less than $40 a day after tax. The difference that being able to skill up made in my life was enormous. I went through the long, hard process, the Cert 2 in construction, the trade certificate, you know, all the gas fitting tickets, the Cert 4, the contractor's licence, the things that enable you to climb the ladder of prosperity in this country. Those are the things that are delivered by TAFE. Those are the things that take you from earning less than $40 a day to earning an income that can support a family. And where that training is provided, that is where lives are changed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's about passing on the skills of generations. I'm a plumber, son of a plumber, and the proudest moment of my professional life was not in this place. It was when my old man signed off on my apprenticeship. That's what TAFE does. That's what training does. We want to encourage younger guys and girls with relevant experience to get after it, to go get it, to earn an income to support their family, to get the training that they need. As the Master Plumbers have said, Master Plumbers of Tasmania welcome the move to make TAFE a government business and allow TAFE to work more in alignment to how industry works. TAFE has been doing a good job in servicing our industry, but there is always room for greater outcomes to be delivered. by moving away from a school-based business model of service delivery to one that actually reflects the operational needs of our business. As Keystone have said, Keystone Tasmania welcomes any initiative to increase capacity and responsiveness of the state's largest training provider. There are certainly opportunities for TAFE to engage more deeply with industry. We look forward to strengthening our relationship with TAFE under this new business model. I know the Chambers of Commerce in my region, Mr Deputy Speaker, including the Burnie Chamber of Commerce, Northwest Business and the Devonport Chamber of Commerce, strongly back TAFE because ours is a region where the jobs are hands-on, where the people get down and dirty and they make sure that, that they can earn a living. They're vocational, they're practical, and those are the jobs that people need, and those are that's the training that businesses require. TASCOS have even said we strongly welcome investment in TAFE and look forward to working with them to address the demand for an expanded community services workforce. Delivering the skills to meet the needs of business, of a training system that looks more like the businesses it serves and the aspirations of those who it trains. Mr Deputy Speaker, it reminds me of the extended high schools from years 11 to years 11 and 12, a government that governs for all, rather than special interests, who put learners at the centre of education. Winston Churchill, who saw many dark hours, said, "All the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honour, duty, mercy, hope." And it is that final word, hope, of which we have needed most in this dark time, as with the others. That hope is embodied in the Northwest nurses coming back to shift after recovering from COVID. The hope of a young couple finally putting out a shingle in the building industry after all those years of talking about it. And the hope of a school leaver who's discovered in this moment of hardship the burning desire to serve, and who pursues agriculture to feed a world racked with disease in an industry that is the ultimate essential. I want to turn to health, Mr Deputy Speaker, because health is another thing that my community relies on government and wants to see the guaranteed services that cares for our people. In dental, there's 20,000 additional dental appointments for public patients across emergency general care and dental clinics. That's about making sure that people of all walks of life can receive the care that they need, whether it's in their toes, whether it's in their organs, in their arms, in their head, wherever it is, wherever they're sick, wherever they need care. It's about making sure that those people have the care that they need. Jobs in the health sector. Since coming to government, we've grown our health budget to $9.8 billion, a 70% increase since the failed Labor Green budget. 15,000 additional full-time equivalent jobs, 800 new nurses, 230 more doctors, 170 more allied health professionals, and over 170 more AMBOs. After hours, in terms of making it easier for Tasmanians to access medical care, both closer to home and at the times that they need it. Primary healthcare sector with a $3 million additional support to make sure that our primary health carers are providing the care when people need it. Because if you have a sick child and it's not within business hours, you deserve the level of care that you would receive at another time, and we want to make sure that happens. It's about complementing other existing initiatives, including Community Rapid Response, who are truly wonderful people, Mr Deputy Speaker, and secondary triage. It's about more ambulances and building on our 50% increase in Ambulance Tasmania staff recruited since 2014. It's about recruiting new paramedic crews, an additional 12 full-time equivalent jobs, new vehicles, new support. We want to make sure that if people are sick, that ambulances can get to them and take them to hospital in a timely manner. And most, perhaps saliently, with the discussion that we've had in our community over the previous months, palliative care. I'm enormously proud that in the August budget we'll be working with peak palliative care and health bodies and the community sector to find solutions for palliative care that will look after our people even at the last moment. Because those people deserve it, Mr Deputy Speaker. And if our community has made the choice that it has, we want to make sure that, as you've said, that we have the gold standard and that people at the end of their life can get the care that they need as well. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to speak as well about safer communities. An additional $2.4 million over 2 years will be provided to allow for 100 new tracking devices to be fitted to offenders. It's also providing police supervision and monitoring. People in my community do not want to see those who have committed crimes against their neighbours, against their friends, against their children, let out in a way in which we don't know what they're doing or where they are. Our people expect more. They demand that those who have committed heinous crimes against our community, that even when they're out of jail, that we are protected. Protecting the vulnerable is one of the most important things that we can do, whether it's COVID, whether it's crime. We need to keep our people safe to secure their future. We're on track to deliver 258 more police officers since we came to government and recruited 200 more correctional officers since 2016. We want to make sure that there's cops on the beat, that people are safe. We don't want a government that sacks them, and Tasmanians remember that well. We want to guarantee that if you walk down the street in one of our major towns, that you'll be protected, and that if you need help, that those who can do something about it will come. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as we speak right now, the state of our parliament is that the upper house is debating additional community safety laws whereby people who are going to work and earning a living in legitimate businesses in important industries in our state are being blocked by radical activists who don't care about the lives and jobs of people in the northwest, the west coast, King Island. They simply care about fundraising in the cities of Melbourne and Sydney. Now, we want to make sure that every Tasmanian has the right to go to work and that they can't be stopped by radical protesters invading their worksite. I'm very proud to support this legislation, and I expect that it will be passed in the upper house, and heaven help those who don't, Mr. Speaker, because our community expects it, our community respects the right to work. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in closing, President Theodore Roosevelt was heard to say, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred in dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. And who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at his worst he fails. And if he fails, at least he fails by daring greatly, and so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat." The world is, in this moment, in this year, a world that has been to hell and back, and very few of the 7 billion people have come back. They are still in purgatory, but quietly, humbly, is the stirring of pride of a people who've long been counted out, the little people of Tasmania. With the world on its knees, a year on from when it first faltered, we stand proudly on our own 2 feet, and with the strength to lift others up. In the hard times now, we, and only just shy of we alone, we the people of Tasmania hold our heads high. We have met the hard times that others have been found wanting. It is under this man, our Premier, Peter Carl Gutwein, that we have been weighed, we have been measured, and our moment has come. This is the state of our state.